Hello, my name is Adina, and I used to be one of Jehovah's Witnesses. I'm now an ex-Jehovah's Witness. This video is about my life as a child as a Jehovah's Witness. And I'm going to have to break it up into two parts because there's a lot of information to cover here. We first have to talk about one of the chief things I think that frame the whole cornerstone of one of the reasons why I left anyway, after I realized what the Jehovah's Witnesses were really about, which is control and power over a lot of people, was I realized that my life as a child as a Jehovah's Witness was not only characterized by abuse, but it was also a very sad life. It was a very lonely and solitary life, and a lot of ex-Jehovah's Witnesses will admit to this. As children, their lives were very sad and depressing. So we're going to break this up into two parts. One of the main things that really, I would say, really was the main thing in my life was the solitariness, the loneliness, the isolation. And this is chiefly engineered because a lot of Jehovah's Witness children are being reared to follow the rules of the Jehovah's Witness cult. And their parents are taught to keep them separate from the world. And that is actual quote in many of the literature of Jehovah's Witnesses. To this end, they are not allowed to associate outside of school with any what they call unbelieving children or peers their own age. There's a reason for this. The Watchtower Society perpetuates a belief that they are the only true religion. They are the only true Christians. In fact, they call themselves the Christian congregation. And that anyone else who is not a Jehovah's Witness is part of Satan's world. So they view the whole world as being under Satan's influence, and everybody in it as being under Satan's influence, therefore being potentially satanic. That is the reason why they isolate their children from associating with other children. Yes, as crazy as it sounds, as psycho as it sounds, that is the honest truth. As a child, this impacted me. So I was not allowed to play with any of the kids in my neighborhood. School was not even an issue for me because, as many of the Jehovah's Witness children can attest to, a lot of their parents, not all, but a lot of their parents pulled them out of regular schools, or like me, they never went to a regular school, and they were home studied. I was home studied from the time I was, or homeschooled, from the time I was 1 to about 11 years of age. During that time, I didn't have really any contact with any kids my age. If it wasn't for the fact that I had my sister to play with, I wouldn't have had anybody to play with because all my other siblings were older than me. So it was a very lonely childhood, except for the fact, of course, I was lucky to have my younger sister, and we're still close to this day. She actually left the Jehovah's Witnesses before I did, and woke up way before I did. She has a post on YouTube, See by Dilly. She actually, because of being homeschooled, experienced a lot of learning disorders because she was not properly educated. I myself didn't experience the same learning disorders as she did, but I, to this day, have horrible trouble with mathematics and even the simplest of mathematical and arithmetic problems. However, I was lucky enough to be a natural reader. I started reading when I was 4. I just picked it up like the water to a duck. and that was my salvation. So I read everything. That's what kept my eyes really open to a lot of stuff that was happening, that was going down in the Jehovah Witness cult. Stuff that I even realized at the time when I was reading about and processed as I got older. And that's why I left. But we're talking about my life as a child. I was not allowed to associate with kids at school. Even in the Christian congregation, which is what they call themselves, they're called their meetings, their Christian gatherings meetings, and they don't like to say church. They want to remain separate from the world. Again, anything to make them separate or special. And I wasn't even allowed to associate with children that went to the congregation of Jehovah's Witnesses, because my mother deemed them to be what the Watchtower and Tract Society calls spiritually weak. The Watchtower and Tract Society perpetuated this idea of people being able to be spiritually weak even if they were witnesses, and this is to keep people in line with doing exactly what the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society tells you that the Bible is telling you to do. So what would constitute as a person being spiritually weak? A child who is spiritually weak, let's say their parents allowed them to go to prom. That was spiritually weak. If their parents threw a costume party, which as one person in the congregation did, he was actually counseled on it, that was considered spiritually weak. Extracurricular activities, as they called them, which are basically after school, normal after school activities like playing on a sports team or being involved in the music program or being a cheerleader or in the drama class or the chess club or whatever, computer club, and as in the case of me, which is a long story, I'll explain more later. Those activities were considered, if you indulged in those activities, you were considered to be spiritually weak, because they thought it would be a better use, the society was telling the parents that it would be a better use of your children's time if they spent more time studying the Bible and proselytizing to bring more members into the organization. Why? Because Armageddon's going to come, God's going to kill all these evil, wicked people that are part of Satan's world, and only people that follow all of Jehovah's rules are going to live on a paradise earth. And so to save your kids' lives, why have them worry about these unimportant extracurricular activities that, like, music, art, blah, blah, blah. They should be focusing solely, as much as possible, aside from eating, sleeping, and drinking, on being a Jehovah's Witness. So that was a lot of what characterized me growing up. Complete isolation and social deprivation. I never played with any kids my own age. And the high school that I ended up going to, the school from junior high to high school, from when I was about 11, 12 to high school, was a pilot school called Venture, where you only went one day a week and spent an hour with an instructor. There was almost no time spent with children your own age. And even though I looked at those children, I was afraid to talk to them because my mother was always hovering around, watching everything I did to make sure that I didn't start hanging out with any of these worldly kids while she wasn't there. So when she kind of occasionally got lax, and I was able to talk a little bit, but it was very, very restricted. And so I'm going to stop here and go on to part 2. This is a good place to stop.